What they've got is Trump is Hitler and he gropes women, which, if you're paying attention, was exactly the closing argument Hillary Clinton had 8 years ago. So they're desperate. They are desperate. They are in horrible trouble. They are sinking fast. And every time Kamala Harris tries to do something to fix it, whether it's an interview with NBC News, whether it's an interview with Telemundo, whether it is the CNN town hall last night, she ends up hurting herself that much more. The only thing that comes out of those media appearances is more damaging moments that exacerbate the problem that they've got. So yesterday, we saw an extraordinary mountain of slime. An October surprise Wednesday before an election that we have never seen before. From the Trump is Hitler news conference that Kamala Harris held in front of the vice president's residence, to this despicable blowing up of the Atlantic story, which has absolutely no sourced on the record witnesses to back it up. We talked about this story yesterday. To this despicable, tawdry, disgusting story that hit The Guardian. The Guardian. They couldn't even get an American newspaper to publish this one. The Guardian found a young woman. Well, she's not young anymore because this happened over 30 years ago. But at the time, this woman claims that Donald Trump groped her in what felt like a, quote, twisted game with Jeffrey Epstein. Oh, I love that Jeffrey Epstein is thrown in here as a character witness to back up the story, considering, well, he's no longer with us. They threw this story out there to, again, slime Donald Trump. And then understand what we've got. We are less than 2 weeks from Election Day, and their closing argument is not, here's my economic plan to lower costs and cost of living and help American workers get their jobs back and keep a roof over their head and feed their children without going broke every month. They don't have, here's my plan to secure the border and bring crime down in the streets. They don't have a plan about how they're going to stand by our ally Israel in the Middle East and end the war. They don't have a plan on how they're going to end the war in Ukraine, other than continuing to throw hundreds of millions and billions of dollars at the war to continue it going. They don't have any plan with China. They don't have any plan that they're articulating and communicating to the American people. What they've got is Trump is Hitler and he gropes women, which, if you're paying attention, was exactly the closing argument Hillary Clinton had 8 years ago. They have fallen into the exact same trap that they have made this election not about the voters and not about the American people. They've made this election about their hatred of Donald Trump. And the American people appear to be responding appropriately to that. Meanwhile, as we look at the journalistic ethics behind this story breaking about this model that claims that she got groped, at the very same time, we've got this story, which also comes from a British newspaper, this one, the Daily Mail. We've already talked about the Daily Mail's very, very solid reporting with regard to Doug Emhoff cheating on his first wife with a babysitter, paying her hush money, getting her pregnant, and God knows what happened to that baby, right? We then had the other Daily Mail article from the same reporter that alleges that there are 3 contemporaneous accounts and witnesses to a woman who was dating Doug Emhoff, who claimed that he smacked her on the streets at the Cannes Film Festival so hard that it spun her around. And now that same publication with that same reporter got this young woman, the victim of Doug Emhoff's aggression, to speak out and tell her story. Kamala Harris's husband, Doug Emhoff, slapped me in the face so hard I spun around. I'm disgusted by his fake, perfect spouse persona. Second gentleman's accuser bravely breaks her silence. Now, I could be wrong, but I'll bet you have seen more in mainstream media and on cable news and on broadcast news about the model from 30 years ago who cannot be verified and has no witnesses at the time saying that Donald Trump groped her. I bet you've seen more about that than you've seen about this. Well, let's explore this story for a moment. We're going to cover both of them right now, and we're going to compare them side by side because unlike Anderson Cooper and George Stephanopoulos and all of the corporate New York Times, Washington Post mainstream media outlets, we actually do have a lot of faith in you and your intelligence and your judgment. So we'll throw both stories out there in front of you and we'll give you context. We'll compare and contrast the sourcing of these two stories, and you can decide which ones you want to believe. Here's the article about Doug Emhoff's victim. Daily Mail. I was living in New York and Doug was living in Los Angeles, Jane said. I met him on Match.com. After work one night, I met him for drinks at a hotel near Times Square. She said Emhoff's odd behavior began immediately when he invited his son Cole to join them about an hour into their first date in March 2012. That is odd. Can my son join us on our first date? It was an odd request for a first date, but I also felt bad that his son was walking around the city waiting for his dad to finish his Match.com date. So I agreed. In retrospect, it should have been a red flag. You think? So let's unpack this for a minute. He's from LA. He's in New York with his son, and he's going on a blind date with someone he met on Match.com, and he told his son to wander around the streets of New York until the date is over. This is the guy who's the perfect father and husband, the way it's been put. Or how did Jen Psaki put it? You're redefining manhood. Oh, he sure is. He sure is. Jane said their relationship consisted of an intense few months, with Emhoff discussing marriage and children after just weeks. He flew me to Los Angeles in April 2012. I stayed in his home for a week. The entire time he was alluding to marriage and having children with me, she told Daily Mail. He was totally love bombing me. He grabbed me around the stomach and talked about wanting more babies. Boy, that dream sure disappeared fast when he married Kamala Harris, didn't it? Jane said that less than a month into her relationship, he got a lucrative job offer in the UK, and Emhoff gave her the permission he was willing to leave his family behind. Oh, excuse me. Gave her the impression he was willing to leave his family behind. Quote, he was really pushing me to pursue it, and he seemed like he was willing to come with me to London, she said. He was ready to uproot, even though he had a family, and he had a child still in junior high school. What's frightening for a woman that's been on the other end of it, and as she goes on now to talk about the abuse that she had to endure, the physical assault from this man. What's frightening for a woman that's been on the other end of it is watching this completely fabricated persona being portrayed, Jane said. He's being held out to be the antithesis of who he actually is, and that is utterly shocking. Now, that is the story that broke today about the victim of Doug Emhoff's rage, of his physical violence. A woman that trusted him as in a loving relationship, albeit only a few months. And let's not forget, the reason that he smacked her so hard that she spun on her heel, according to her direct testimony that you've seen now, as well as two witnesses that she told within 12 hours of the incident, and then a third witness where she told the exact same consistent story within a year of this incident. All of that is documented now. The reason that he apparently smacked her so hard that night is because he saw her flirting with another man at a party. That is a jealous rage that is, well, a bit of a signal that there's a lot more going on with this guy than what meets the eye, to say the least. All right. Now juxtapose that story with the story that got a whole lot of play yesterday. And that is this woman who was a model. And since it's a British tabloid, we have to have pictures of her cleavage, apparently, from 30 years ago. And this is what she claims in this video testimony.
When Jeffrey and I would talk, he mentioned Trump frequently. He was clearly a close friend, and they were spending a lot of time together. Late winter, early spring of 93. I was on a walk with Jeffrey from his brownstone on the Upper East Side down Fifth Avenue when Jeffrey looked at me and said, let's go stop by and see Trump. And so we went to Trump Tower and went up the elevator, and moments later, Trump was greeting us and each other.
And that's when she claims he groped her. But here's what's interesting. Good job, Greg Price, on Twitter for pointing this out. And you heard this, right? You heard exactly what her testimony was there, that this was in 1993, right? Just real fast.
When Jeffrey and I would talk, he mentioned Trump frequently. He was clearly a close friend. And
by the way, there's no one else who claims that Donald Trump and Jeffrey, there's no firsthand encounter witnesses that claim they were close friends. Yes, they were seen at various parties together, as was, it seems like, half of humanity, or at least the rich and elite in America were seen. But famously, Donald Trump banned Jeffrey Epstein from Mar-a-Lago and any of his properties after it was made public and he found out exactly what he was doing and what was going on, which is a far cry from how Bill Clinton treated Jeffrey Epstein after revelations about his behavior. But let's continue with this.
They were spending a lot of time together. Late winter, early spring of 93.
Late winter or early spring 1993 is when she was visiting Jeffrey Epstein at his place, and then they walked over to Trump's house, allegedly. According to Wikipedia, Jeffrey Epstein moved into the house in this neighborhood in 1996. So he wasn't living in the area that she claims he was living in 1993. He didn't move there until 3 years later. Seems like a bit of a red flag. Seems like something a journalist would want to explore. There's another thing that a journalist would want to explore, and the journalist in question here is Lucy Osborne for The Guardian. Here's her story. She's very proud of it. She put it out on X yesterday. Former model alleges Donald Trump groped her in what felt like a twisted game with Jeffrey Epstein. Now, if you're feeling deja vu here, you should be, not just because these are allegations that have been said about Donald Trump going all the way back to the Hillary Clinton campaign of 2016. No, you might be feeling some very specific deja vu about this story, and most specifically about this publication, The Guardian, and this writer, Lucy Osborne. The deja vu is very real because here we are, October 23rd, 2 weeks before the election, and here's the story she put out. 4 years ago, September 17th, 6 weeks before the election, same writer, same publication, she had a blockbuster. In The Guardian today, Amy Doris bravely told me about her allegation of sexual assault against Donald Trump. On Why Now, she says, I've noticed a shift in how women are being treated since he became president. So I'm coming out for me and for my kids. What an incredible coincidence that the exact same writer at the exact same publication, just 2 to 6 weeks before a presidential election, 4 years apart, has pretty much the exact same story. With, again, no corroborating witnesses. That's a pretty thorough comparison of these two stories, and it's really up to you to decide what you want to believe or not. But I know where I am right now, and by the way, I'm right where Scott Jennings is on CNN when this came up during a panel discussion last night.
I got to tell you, this campaign is so everything that's said about Donald Trump and his treatment of women and the gender gap in this campaign. This rapper, who I fully admit sold a lot of records, if you've read some of the things he has said about the promotion of domestic violence.
No. What he said,
women.
He said, if you're famous,
Bakari,
you can grab them by the.
Bakari, I listened to your entire filibuster. If you could just give me 13 seconds,
I give you 12 because he said grab them by the.
And so when you think about the things he has said in order to sell those records, and you also consider some of the questions that are swirling around Harris's own husband in this regard.
Oh my God.
I
Okay, you don't even get 12
Wait a
seconds.
second.
I'm not going to let you go into the far end of BS.
I'm just telling you.
Scott,
Like, you can't go.
ugly.
Listen,
Hey,
I can't represent you in the defamation case.
we're gonna stop here for a second.
So the second Scott Jennings points out on CNN that there is an incredibly highly credible allegation against Doug Emhoff that is way more credible than anything Christine Blasey Ford came up with against Justice Kavanaugh. In an era of believe all women and believe all victims, and I only know that we're supposed to believe all women and believe all victims because I've heard Kamala Harris say it over and over again. The second Scott Jennings points out that that story is out there and nobody's talking about it, CNN shuts him down and censors him and claims that he's going to be the victim of a defamation lawsuit because he's defamed Doug Emhoff. And by the way, I bet Scott Jennings would love for Doug Emhoff to sue him for defamation. I think that would be a fascinating discovery process. One other item on this, as you wrestle with the slime that's being thrown at Donald Trump during this October surprise season in their desperation, take a look at what Tim Walz put on his X feed last night. I want to talk to all the guys for a second. Who does that? This guy is such a fraud. Hey, I want to talk to all the guys for a second. He says, think about all the women in your life that you love. Daughters, wives, moms, cousins, neighbors. This election is about their lives and protecting their freedoms. Tim Walz wants to talk about all the guys. And he wants all the guys to vote a certain way to protect the freedoms of all the women in your life. And of course, Tim Walz is a good Democrat. So whenever he talks about women and protecting their lives and their freedoms, what he really means is he wants to make sure those women get to kill babies before they're born. That's the beginning, middle, and end of the freedoms and safeties that Democrats like Tim Walz care about when it comes to women. Okay, Tim, you know what? I want to talk to all the guys out there too, because this election is about your wives and your moms and your daughters and your cousins and your neighbors and your friends, the women in your life. Do you really want to elevate Doug Emhoff to the level of redefining manhood for this entire next generation of young men in America, given what we have now learned about him? Do we really want to run cover for him? Think about it, guys. This is about all the women in your lives. What would Tim Walz do? There's a lot at stake in this upcoming election, but regardless of who's sitting in the White House, the fuse on the economy has already been lit. It's like Mission Impossible. Dun, 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 dun. 4 years of a conservative presidency is not going to be enough to turn the tide on our $35 trillion national debt. And if the left wins, it's like throwing gas on a dumpster fire. No, you don't have a whole lot of control over the election's outcome. All you can do is vote and, well, bring 10 friends with you. But what you can control is your own savings. You can diversify your savings right now by investing in gold from Birch Gold. You know, gold. For millennia, gold has stood firm in the face of greedy governments, economic upheavals, and global strife, and it can help protect you right now. Birch Gold will help you convert an IRA or 401k into an IRA in physical gold. And it doesn't cost you a penny out of pocket. That's right. These are existing IRAs and 401ks, money you're already sitting on that you can convert into physical gold. And in the past 4 years, the buying power of the US dollar has declined, but the price of gold has increased by about 40%. That's not a coincidence. Get more information about this right now. Text my name, Larry, Larry, to 989898. Get your free info kit on gold and trust Birch Gold, as I do, to protect your savings. Text Larry to 989898. Do it today.